Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
Hello, very good evening to you. Welcome to the Locker Room and welcome back to myself, Michael. I've not been on for a few Fridays actually, but it's nice to be back. And believe it or not, I've got a full house. Well, not my house, obviously, in different studios all over Scotland. We have got Graham Duffy. He doesn't make any introductions whatsoever. How's it going, Graham?
All good, mate. All good. Looking forward to a weekend of football, although I might change my opinion on that after Sunday.
Yeah, maybe that's why we're on at 7 o'clock on Sunday instead of 5 o'clock on Sunday. I'm not sure. Stephen Rizek, how are you, Stephen?
Being better. Not seen my team win in ages, but hopefully that'll change this weekend.
Yeah, and I was going to call Ross Alan Wicker for the show, but I don't know. Because Alan Wicker travels everywhere up and down the country. And when you see this game, Ross will probably say, "Who's Alan Wicker?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm getting to that age where I'm not 21 anymore." But anyway, Ross, how are you?
You read my mind there, Michael. I have no idea who that is, I'll be honest. No, I'm all good. You're talking about travelling up and down the country. It's was it 1,006 miles that County have been up and down the country the last 7 days. So just mental, absolutely mental with 3 away games. So no, all good. Looking forward to a home game at last, albeit it's a bit of a tough proposition, but here's what it is, I guess.
Good for the benefit of the listeners and the watchers, and for Ross's benefit as well. Yes, I am an old man. Graham knows who Alan Wicker is because Graham is slightly older by about 5 years, maybe Graham, I'm not sure. But Alan Wicker used to do travel programs on the TV, and he goes all over the world. But obviously you don't do that. You go all over Scotland. Anyway, that's enough rubbish for me for this week. We're here until 7 o'clock. Get your comments in. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and you can find us on Twitter as well at the Locker Room Indie. Right, let's start by the midweek games, Ross, and it was a decent point away from. It was a decent point in Tuesday night away to the Highbees.
Yeah, it could have been 3 as well, which is quite a scary thing when it was 2-0, especially after what went on at Fir Park. I mean, Stephen was there, he saw it. I think I was a bit worried about confidence going into that game. So when we're kind of 2-0 down halfway through the second half, you're thinking, well, that's maybe it. But the fact that, County I've been on the receiving end of a comeback on the Saturday, and then thankfully we're on the right end of a comeback on Tuesday night. It was really positive, and I think the chances we created in the second half as well. Hibs were holding on a little bit at the end with a couple of saves from the keeper from set pieces, and there was a couple of headers that flashed across goal. So overall, you can't complain being a County fan or a fan of a club our size, and you go to Easter Road and you're 2-0 down and you still come away with a point. You can't complain about that, but I think it was positive to see just the reaction following on from the disappointment on Saturday after being 3-1 up with 3 minutes to go, and you don't come away with 3 points. So no, it was encouraging.
I kind of watched the game on Tuesday night, and second half better than the first half, Ross.
I think it was very even the first half. I don't think either team really created anything. I think the most clear-cut chance actually fell to County with the James Brown shot that went just by the far post. And apart from that, there wasn't really much in the game. I think Hibs' opening goal is just taking a massive deflection off Ben Puddington. The shot's going wide, and it's just one of those ones where, keeper is already diving towards the far post, and it goes to the opposite side. And, that's kind of how the luck felt like it was going at that point, especially after Saturday. But yeah, it was quite even, and I think we did it on Saturday at Fir Park. We've kind of gone with a back 4 now over the last few weeks. It's been more of a back 3 or a back 5, however you want to look at it. And on Saturday, it was a box midfield with Conor Randall and Scott Allardyce as the two sit midfielders, which has kind of provided an extra bit of protection in front of that back four, even if you're kind of dropping a centre half out of it. And I thought we kind of looked solid defensively at times. I think the goals that we've conceded over the last few days have just come from individual errors. It's not like we've been cut open by teams. So no, it's been encouraging, and the going back to the four at the back allows us to get an extra man in midfield, two up front as well, and we've been scoring goals. 5 goals in the last 2 games as well is very positive after we had a bit of a run of not scoring many goals in a few games. So no, it's been good. We've created chances. We probably could have scored more than we have done too. So no, it's I would say it's probably quite positive to come back with from Edinburgh with a point.
And obviously we'll come back to speak about the big game tomorrow against Celtic. Graham, Tynecastle Wednesday night, you were saying that must have been the worst Livingston performance of the season. Hearts won 1-0, but to be honest, I mean, I only saw the highlights, but they should have won that 2 or 3-0, would you say?
I think if anybody hadn't watched the game and all they saw was the result, they probably think that's quite scrappy. It wasn't. It was a 1-0 battering. I mean, Hearts dominated that game. 80% possession, 25 shots, 10 on target. We should have scored more. I think we had a chance in the first half where Shankland hits the bar. I think if we scored that, it's more comfortable. But it was just constant Hearts pressure. I actually thought we played quite well at times on Wednesday. We just couldn't get that goal. And it was getting frustrating because you could see the fans were getting a bit frustrated. Delighted for Vargas because I think he's been really impressive for me. I was delighted that he got the goal. But it was just a very comfortable victory. But as I put in the group chat, I don't think I've ever seen a more negative side than Livingston. I thought they were awful. And if I was a Livingston fan travelling at that game, I'd be furious at that. And Martindale's kind of reaction after it as well, to say that he was quite happy with what he saw, I wouldn't be, because I thought Livingston were awful. They offered nothing going forward. How can you be happy to have no shots on target? Now, I would understand playing the way that they did at Ibrox or Celtic Park, but they went to East Rodale in the season 1-3-2. We were not playing that well. That was a chance for Livingston to have a go at us, and they were so defensive. I was genuinely really surprised. And I like David Martindale, but I was genuinely surprised at how bad they were.
Do you think the rumours of maybe he's leaving to go to St Johnstone played a part in the performance? Do you think the Livingston players had that in the back of their minds?
I don't think so. I wouldn't have thought that would make any difference. I just think they were just set up very negatively. I actually felt sorry for Newbley because he was basically playing alone, thorough up front and getting no service. They just offered nothing. I mean, defensively they were fine. They actually played well defensively. But you've got to have a threat going the other way. And they just didn't have any of that. And Hearts were very, very comfortable. Honestly, 1-0 doesn't do it justice because that could have easily been 4 or 5. And I think after the performance at Ibrox last week, where I thought we played quite well in that game as well, there is a bit more positivity around Tynecastle just now. I'm not going to say that I'm Naismith in, but there has been more positives. But we need to take that forward to Sunday. But genuinely, I don't think I've seen a worse side at Tynecastle Livingston because they were just so poor.
Now, we might have to put the bleepers on for Stephen because we're going to talk about Motherwell's well, I don't know if you would call that a performance on Wednesday night as well. I mean, it's a shame because they've been picking up points in recent weeks and performing well. Not on Tuesday night because Wednesday night, sorry, because they get beat 4-2 at home against Aberdeen.
Yeah, no, I think that probably Wednesday night is the first game I look at and I go, Kettlewell needs to take a bit of responsibility for it. I mean, we started one up front in Connor Wilkinson, who I'm just going to go out there and say I'm more mobile than Connor Wilkinson. He's not going to run the channels for you. He's not going to hassle defenders. He needs the ball into his feet, otherwise he's useless. So, no, it was a bit probably the worst first half performance I've seen in my time supporting Motherwell that I can remember. It was really, really poor. We created nothing, and Aberdeen got 2 goals. You could easily have had more. We were so poor. And we are really relying on Mika Beirith. I mean, you see it in the game against County. He comes on and completely turns the game for us. But what we need to rectify at the minute is the way that we're shipping goals at the back. I look at some of the goals on Wednesday night. The first one comes right across Liam Kelly's 6-yard box. I think he's got to come out and get that. The third one, he's slow in reacting to a loose ball. And then the fourth one, he tries to come out for a corner and it's just headed into an empty net. So we need to stop conceding sloppy goals. I even remember Ross County's third goal at the weekend. We give Jordan White a free header, like on the halfway line, and then before you know it, Laturi's running through and goal. How is Jordan White, the tallest man on the pitch, being allowed to have a free header? Should never happen. So what Kettlewell was known for when he came in was having the team solid. We need to get back to that, and I just think we need a scrappy 1-0 win for somewhere just to kind of get us up and running again. I'm not quite of the opinion that he's under pressure yet. I know some Motherwell fans saying that are starting to question his job. Not me. I think that's absolutely ludicrous. But I remember Ross saying to me, just if I can put it over to Ross, that I remember we had a discussion on another podcast at the start of the season, and you said to me, Kettlewell, it's really good when it's going well, but when it starts to go wrong, he struggles to change it. And I'm just kind of worrying that that's what I'm starting to see here at the moment.
It's a bit of an interesting one. So I think certainly at County, when we got promoted to the Championship, it was the co-manager situation. And even that first season back up in the top flight was still co-managers between Ferg and Kets. And it was going well, but there was kind of periods at times where performances weren't great, and it was just how was the tide going to turn. So then when Kets took the manager role himself, things started really well. It was a positive start to the season. We picked up a good handful of points, but then all of a sudden that's when the poor run of form came. And certainly the last game that he was in charge, the 2-0 defeat against Hamilton at home, that was a tough watch. And you know, he spent quite a few years out of football, you know, and obviously he went into Motherwell, made such a huge impact. And, you know, as a Ross County fan, as a Stuart Kettlewell fan, both as a player and what he has achieved at the club as a manager as well, I want to see him do well. But I think it's always interesting with young managers in general and inexperienced managers when they go into a club and they get that immediate bounce. But then that's when, you know, if they start to stumble a little bit, the team, if they start picking up a few losses on the bounce, you look at Barry Robson at Aberdeen, Stephen Naismith at Hearts, you know, Ketts is now getting kind of classified in that bracket as well. So how do they turn it around? Because that's the sign of a good manager. And I think it's, you know, the experience then shows when you've got managers like sort of Derek McInnes, for example, who, you know, despite a Kilmarnock maybe going through a poor run at some point, he's still able to kind of like churn out a couple of results back to back, and it almost starts the momentum again. So that's probably that's the thing I'm most interested to see, is how Stuart kind of restarts that Motherwell cycle, because certainly on Saturday, I was quite surprised at how they set up for long periods in the first half as well. You know, they were quite comfortable to let County kind of play out from the back, and, you know, with a front two of Theo Bair and Ollie Shaw. And even in the midfield, there wasn't actually that much of a high press. It was almost, they were quite happy to let County come on to them. And, you know, fair enough, they got into half-time at 0-0. There was no goals conceded at that point. But I thought they would come out and press us a bit more in a kind of game like that, because, you know, Stephen, as a Motherwell fan, you'll be looking at that thinking, well, that's a possible 3 points there. You can understand if they sit back and try and stick in their shape when it's a bigger team that comes to Fir Park. But I was just a bit surprised that, and even the service into the strikers, I didn't think that was that great. It was almost like hit something towards them and see if it sticks. There was a couple of moments of like really nice interchanging play, like in midfield between Spittle, Slattery and Payton. But at times when you're trying to play up to Ollie Shaw as a target man, that's not Ollie's strengths. You know, it's his link-up play is not the best. If you can get him in behind running channels, you know, as a finisher, he will score goals. But, you know, he's not one that you're looking for diagonals across the pitch from your centre half. So it was wee things like that I was noticing. I was thinking, that's not the Motherwell side I kind of expected to see on Saturday.
No, I completely agree. If I can just come in there, especially with your point that you've made about the lack of pressing from the front in the midfield. it was completely the same on Wednesday night. We actually just allowed Aberdeen to come right on to us. They were allowing the likes of McGrath and Leighton Parks and Graham Shinney. They just dictated the game. You cannot allow that to happen. Especially Graham Shinney. He's the one that makes everything tick for Aberdeen. Everything goes through him. And I was shocked at what I was seeing. We needed to get up on them, and it wasn't happening. I just feel that we relied a lot on Van Veen last season, and we're now in the position where we're relying a lot on Mika Bereth already. He's played 94 minutes, he's got 3 goals, 2 assists, which is incredible. But if he's no fit, I don't know where the goals are coming from, and then you look at the way we're conceding at the back now, it's starting to get a wee bit worrying.
I want to come back to Aberdeen Motherwell. I just want to ask Roska a question though on Tuesday night, because obviously I wasn't watching the game, but I saw the highlights later on. And I thought the one player that actually made a massive difference for Ross County was Jan Dander. Now, I think that boy is real quality. Now, do you think there's a possibility, and he won't obviously go to Celtic or Rangers, but a team like Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen could use a player like Dander? Because anytime I see him, the guy's creative, he's got a really good bit of vision. And just he, for me, looked the one player that looked like he was a big difference on Tuesday.
He would, I wouldn't say he would necessarily start in like a strongest starting 11, but at the very least, he would be a very good squad player, even at either Celtic or Rangers, in my opinion anyway. You look at the moments of quality that he can come up with is just, he's technically the best player I've seen in Dingwall, with his ability on the ball, his creativity, his deliveries into the box. They are just so dangerous. And I think he's probably not had the start to the season that he probably would have liked. On Tuesday night, he started on the bench because Kyle Turner came on for him at halftime at Fir Park. And Kyle Turner was actually the one that changed the game and deservedly got his start on Tuesday night. So I don't know if that's maybe kind of lit a fire in Jan to kind of come on and prove his point and say, look, well, this is my starting position here. I'm coming back on to take it. And the delivery into the box for the own goal, it's a dangerous ball. It takes the keeper completely out of the game. And okay, we get the lucky break with the own goal, but he's just involved in everything. If you give him a free role, he can play anywhere across the pitch and just link the play between a midfield and a centre forward. He can play passes through behind. His vision is incredible. He is a player that has got a very, very high ceiling, and we are very lucky to have him at Ross County. Now, a lot of Ross County fans expected there to be a lot more interest in him during the summer, and we are very lucky that he's still at the club right now. When January comes about, it's going to be very interesting to see who starts kind of sniffing about him, because with 6 months left in his deal, some teams might think, they can get him a pre-contract or, try and get him on a bit of a cheaper permanent deal there and then. But, he could easily play in any other team in the Premiership, at least as a starter, and then, in one of the old firm, probably as a squad player, but he would improve them and he would give them a different option as well that, can create things. But even he could go back down to the English Championship and walk into quite a few teams there, because we took him up from Swansea. He struggled to get a few minutes, especially during his last season there. And it took him a bit of time to get up to speed, but, opposition fans can see, you can spot a quality player in a team. It doesn't take a lot to see that. And, every opposition fan that comes to Dingwall or when we go away from home asks about Danda, and rightly so.
I know you've obviously not won since you played Killie in September. You've obviously drawn the last 3 games, but are you as a County fan seeing improvements in that team? Because obviously Tuesday night you're 2-0 down at Easter Road, not an easy place to go, but you've managed to come back, and as you put in the group chat and you've said here as well, you could have won the game. So there obviously are signs of improvement there, and obviously you've had to come back against Ross County, Motherwell as well. So there is improvements there.
Yeah, no, 100% there's improvements, and you look across the league just now, it's so tight. Like one win for us tomorrow, however unlikely some people might view it, would shoot County up from 10th to 5th place, or just 1 point off 4th place, which just shows how tight the league is just now. And certainly from last season, there are improvements. I think we've looked very good with the back four over the last couple of games. We went with the back four against Celtic on the opening day of the season as well and pressed them very high. So it's going to be very interesting to see what we do tomorrow, if we stick with that, or, against the bigger teams per se in the league, or the teams you want to kind of match up against in shape, likes of Kilmarnock or a Livingston. That's when we've gone to the back five just to match up and just try and win the battle, which has been encouraging to see that we have done as well. Like, there's a lot of times where teams would come to Dingwall or we would go to away grounds and we would just get bullied off the ball. Whereas now we're the physical team going and, as opposition fans don't like to see it, but you kick lumps out of the opposition team, and you pick up cheap fouls or break up the play. Dundee fans were, I would say, not very complimentary of County style last Tuesday, but it was effective in taking away a result, and barring a subjective VAR decision, they could have come away with the 3 points. Now, it's game management. I think that's what Malky's helped install on the side, is that it's a bit of a siege mentality. It's go out and win your battles, go out, go be physical, if you're seeing your opponent breaking away, take a cheap yellow card, reset. Whereas at times there was almost a bit of, I would say, naivety at times last season where we wouldn't be willing to do that, and we would get caught on the counter attack and we would lose 2 points or a point because of it, just cheap goals to give away. Whereas now we're just nightmares to play against, and we'll pull teams into that battle, which is quite encouraging to see because of how many years that we've seen it go against County and we've lost that battle. So now it's nice to see that we're actually going to places like Rugby Park and beating them at their own game in a way.
Paul Donaldson makes an interesting comment. He's a happy Don fan. Sorry, Stephen, maybe that's why you went away in a huff there, because he's happy for the win on Wednesday night, and hopefully he says that will give them a bit of momentum going on to tomorrow night's game against Hibs. We're going to speak about that one. Graham, I wanted to touch upon the big two, as it were, in the league. Rangers got a brilliant win on maybe there was a Thursday morning, I think it was 5-0, and then but the game was over. I wanted to share a comment that Jogs make early on, that the game was overshadowed by the Rangers fans using pyrotechnics inside Dens Park. Now, obviously, it's a football show. We're going to speak about this very, very briefly. But somebody could get serious hurt there at the game.
Yeah, no pyro, no party. But I genuinely, and I said this before we came on here as well, I honestly think we're now going to get to a point where every single person going to any single game is going to get checked. Because I know when I go to Tynecastle, I don't get patted down. I might enjoy that, you never know. The pensioners do it, of course. But I don't get patted down. I genuinely think you are now going to start to see police now or stewards patting down every fan that comes into the ground to make sure they've got nothing on them. Because it's very easy to hide the pyrotechnic in your pocket or something. It's very easy to do that. But I think they're going to start checking folk now. And I know that, I think it's on the BBC website earlier on, there's going to be a meeting with the police and stuff about these pyro things. Because it is happening a lot more now. And obviously there was a massive delay after another delay on Wednesday night because Rangers team bus hadn't arrived yet. But yeah, it's not... to be honest, the colours look really good. Don't get me wrong. But it is going to come at a point where somebody will get injured. Might even be a player in the park. So it has to be stopped. But stopping it's going to be an issue.
I think that, I don't know about you, Ross and Steven, but I think even though Graham said that they're having a meeting on Monday, and I did see it on the BBC websites, by the way, other websites are available as well. But is the SFA kind of too late to have this meeting? Because this meeting should have happened years ago. I mean, I think football's got out of hand, but also, do you think that's going to put football fans off going to the games because they know what's going to happen, whether it's the Rangers fans or, well, I was going to say the Green Brigade, but I suppose that's another matter for another show in another week because they're banned now for home and away games. But do you think that's going to put fans off from going to the games?
I don't think so. If I can just speak before Ross, I don't think so, because it's been happening. It's been happening for years. I mean, I know Motherwell fans have had pyro at games. I could lost count of how many games I've seen pyro at Motherwell games, and I think the more that you highlight these things, the more it brings it into the light, and people who are going to want to bring pyro, they're just going to bring more. So you're going to need to make sure that the sanctions that you bring in are strong. As somebody who's been hitting the back of the leg with a pyrotechnic at a Motherwell game before, I can still see what they add to the game, but I think that there needs to be a case of, if you can do it in a safe manner, try and do it in a safe manner. Now, my issue is that possible? Because particularly at away games, you could have people in the crowd who have asthma, who have maybe lung conditions, and you go, oh, that's smoke. And then about them, it can't be good. So they're going to need to come up with some heavy sanctions, because you see it with anything else that's illegal, people still find a way to do it. So I don't know how they're going to be able to stop it.
Ross?
I agree with Stephen on a lot of that. I think it's something we've seen a lot more often in Scottish football over the last few years, for example. And we see it abroad as well. A lot of European football, whatever competition it might be. And the displays at times, they do, they look great for what they are. But it's then the risk factor in those displays. There's been a few instances, like in different European competitions, where players have been affected by a flare or a firework that's been thrown on the park, and then all of a sudden you're then getting games abandoned because of that. And no fan wants to see a game abandoned. So if you can kind of control the actions of your fans, or you control your own actions, you wouldn't want to be responsible for something like that. It's like a game getting abandoned. It's a really, really tough one. Stephen's right. The deterrents to put people off from doing things like that, if that's the way they're going down, they need to be very strong to stop people from doing that. Obviously across Europe, we've seen that at times there are safe ways to do it. But again, as Stephen alluded to there, you don't know what the people in this same away section with you, their health condition is. For example, if they've got lung problems and things, and as soon as these flares or smoke bombs are going off, you can understand why people are struggling in an environment like that. And obviously Wednesday night at Dens was like an extreme example of that. Usually you only see maybe like one or two in a stand game if you're lucky at times, but that on Wednesday night was I don't know if they were trying to dry out the waterlogged side at Dens there or what was going on, but it's a bit of it's a really, really tricky one. I can see both sides to the argument, but you've just got to kind of, if the way that they're going is they're trying to take it out of Scottish football or UK football, as it seems to be as well, then you can imagine that there'll be probably heavy sanctions that come in.
Because I don't think that anybody who brings a flare to the game is going with the intention of harming anybody or causing any disturbance. I think they're literally just looking to try and add to the atmosphere. But to counteract that, imagine they did go with pyro and something did happen to someone, then that person is going to have to live with that for the rest of their life.
It only takes one person to do it.
Do you know what I mean? So it's about, they need to try and find a balance, and I just don't know if that's possible. It's certainly not possible for me. Sorry, that was a terrible disabled.
Just to jump in, that I'm not sure if it's in Holland, but I think is there rules that if there's something that's thrown onto the pitch, the players are pulled off the pitch immediately. And the game's abandoned.
Yeah,
so that's an example of how strict those sanctions can be. But that's then just for the players in that moment, and it's obviously a deterrent to stop fans from trying to interrupt the game that way. But then it's then also about the fans that are also in the ground and any of the stakeholders that are in the environment at that point, whether it be fans, stewards, members of staff that are working at that game. Everyone can be affected by moments like this, whether you don't know if a steward's got a lung problem that when these flares are set off, they could be struggling from it or whatnot. So it's just, it's a tough one, because you can see that sometimes it works in Europe, but then when you've got these examples, there are then a lot more examples of games getting abandoned or players being injured or issues there. So you can understand why they're potentially trying to reduce that risk to kind of protect everyone involved. So, yeah.
To be honest, there's been quite a few games this season that I wish I could have taken a flare all and got a game abandoned because it's Hearts.
I'm starting to get that way as well. I'm going to start setting them with the
Yeah. Ross, the last game we're going to speak about on Wednesday night, and that ties in nicely to the game that you're going to tomorrow, is Celtic against Ross Kidney. Celtic won that one by 2-1.
Celtic against St Mirren, even.
St Mirren, yeah. So sorry, I'm getting carried away about tomorrow's game. St Mirren played well. Defended well, had a few chances themselves. I think that's the second time St Mirren's came to Celtic Park and had a go at Celtic as well. Because remember last season, and was it the quarterfinals of the Scottish Cup? It took Celtic up until 70 odd minutes to get the second goal. Because at that point in time it was 1-0. It ties in nicely to tomorrow's game. I think you're getting Celtic at the right time, because obviously they picked up a point last week against Hibs at Easter Road. Wednesday night, they kind of scraped by St Mirren, you would say. But it's not a happy hunting ground for Celtic, as you know, over the years, going up to your neck of the woods.
How did Brendan Rodgers describe it? As a camel trek up the A9, was it, the other day? It's the phrase that he used. It's the first time I've ever heard the A9 described as that. But it's a really interesting one kind of going into Saturday. But first, just on Wednesday night, you look at St Mirren, and St Mirren have only lost to Celtic and Rangers this season. They're sitting third for a reason. They are beating the other teams that they're coming up against, and if they're not winning, they're drawing. That 2-2 game against Aberdeen, they're probably quite unfortunate not to take away 3 points from that. And they've created a bit of a gap between themselves and the rest, although it's only 4 points, but you're still looking at that as a game in favour over everyone. And they've capitalised over poor starts from the three big city teams, in the rest of the country. So, they're doing very well. They're confident. Rightly so. They're able to go to Celtic Park and have a go when you're sat at third in the table, and up until that point you'd only lost one game. So credit to them. They're organised, well drilled. They're defensively good. They're a threat going forward. They've got a bit of everything. So fair play to them. They've carried on the momentum that they had from last season to get into this one. As for Celtic, the weekend draw at Easter Road was a bit of a surprise, especially after seeing Hibs on Tuesday night against ourselves. I was kind of a bit taken aback that Celtic didn't manage to get through them, but I think it's a weird one with Celtic this season, because they don't look like they're the same unstoppable force that they were over the last couple of seasons under Postecoglou. I don't know if that's the change of style or the change of approach, but you'd be constantly on the back foot the entire game against Celtic over the last couple of seasons, whereas because Celtic are more patient in possession now, it allows teams to kind of get in their shape or potentially press them off the ball, and you look back the last couple of seasons, if Celtic were still having an off day, because of the style of play, they were still winning games, whereas when they have an off day this season, they're not necessarily winning games. Okay, they're drawing and they've not lost the game. That's still pretty good going. But, there's still opportunities there, like St Johnstone at home, for example. That was a really strange one for me, considering how poor St Johnstone looked at that point in the season. And then, they'll then back that up with a really comprehensive win at Livingston, or, they'll go and batter Hearts at Tynecastle. Sorry, Graham. And then they'll go to Easter Road and just kind of stutter a wee bit there. So it really depends what Celtic's going to turn up on Saturday, and everyone knows that. Everyone of any fan of any team in the league knows that you need to meet one of the Old Firm on an off day for them if you're to have any chance of picking up points from it. Will they have one eye on Tuesday night in Madrid? I hope so. If a camel trek to Dingwall is what Brendan's worried about, I don't know what he thinks a trip over to Madrid is on a Tuesday night, but yeah, I'm optimistic that we could get something from it, just because the character we showed on Tuesday night, we are a threat going forward again. We played very well the opening day of the season against Celtic with that 4 at the back and kind of caught them off guard a little bit with how we pressed, and I had a real go at them. On another day, we could have been 2 goals up. Wasn't to be, unfortunately. We know the result that carried on there. But yeah, we've had moments in Dingwall against Celtic, the 3-2 game in the first season in the top flight, the 1-0 win in February during the COVID season. Jordan White scored a header. There's a couple of draws in there as well where like Alex Schalk was assaulted for a penalty late on. It definitely wasn't a dive, that one. So there's moments there that you look back at and it gives us confidence. And I think the games that we've had against Celtic and Dingwall have always been quite close under Malky. Celtic have never ran away with a game in Dingwall, probably apart from the League Cup one, which was the biggest disappointment at the start of last season. But, we've pushed right until the end, and it's always just taken a late Celtic goal just to kill the game completely. And, you might look back at the stats and that thinking, well, Celtic dominated. But when you're in the ground, you can sense a bit of like nervous energy amongst the Celtic fans when it's just sat at 1-0 and this team is kind of hanging on, or you get an equaliser and, the goals aren't coming the same way. And you're just hanging on, and the energy can build. It can feed onto the players with, what's gone on over the last week off the pitch. You wonder if then that can then get translated in a way from the negative energy or the feeling amongst the club, whatever's going on. Players feed off atmospheres, and could that potentially be another thing, depending, if kind of get an early goal on Saturday and kind of get into halftime ahead or anything like that. It's just always interesting. It's a psychology test almost for teams in this position. So yeah, like who knows what'll happen. I'm hopeful. I'll put it that way.
I was just going to. Oh, sorry, Glenn.
I was just going to ask a question about St Mirren after Wednesday. They're obviously sitting 6 points behind Rangers, 4 ahead of Hearts, sitting comfortably in third just now. Does anyone actually think that St Mirren can maintain this for the rest of the season, or do you think they'll drop off?
I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens to St Mirren if they get a couple of injuries. I think that's when it will be the real test. If they've got a fully fit squad, Ross is spot on in his assessment. They've got great balance throughout the whole team defensively and going forward. So I don't really see it tapering off unless they get a couple of injuries. Now, the laws of averages dictate that over the course of a season you're going to get some injuries. So when that happens, it will be interesting to see how St Mirren react at that point, I think, for them. And I think that will be the real test.
So basically, Ross is away. I was going to ask Ross the question because, Graham, I know that we had Ross on the show at the beginning of the season, was it? When, he's just come on just because he knew that I was going to ask him a question. I like that, Ross. I was just going to ask you the first time that you played Celtic at the beginning of the season, or like you get beat that game, what was it, 4-1 at the end up, or 3-1, I can't remember the score, but you get beat anyway. But how refreshing was it for you, as a Ross County fan, to see your team not sitting back, but to have a bit of a go?
I don't mind seeing my team sit back going to grounds like this, because at the end of the day, what are you kind of to expect of a smaller club going to a club the size of Celtic with the players that they've got, when it's one of these things that we become accustomed to. If you can sit defensively and try and narrow the spaces, you can potentially get a half-time at 0-0. You can then build from that in the second half. At times it doesn't really work like that, we know that, But at the same time, if you go after Celtic, they can pick you apart as well. So it's trying to get that balance right. And, over the last few seasons, we've seen at times we'll go defensive and it goes well, or we'll go defensive and it doesn't go well. And we'll press and it goes well. And at times we'll press and it doesn't go well. So it's just the potluck of which Celtic you come up against on that day. In terms of the opening day of the season, it did catch me by surprise, just because with it being Brendan Rodgers' first kind of league game in charge, no one was really sure of what the changes in style was going to be, if it was going to be that different from Ange. So I could have understood if Malky kind of asked the team to be a bit more conservative and just sit back, narrow the spaces, and then kind of grow into the game. But I was really impressed that they thought, no, we're going to go and put our stamp on the game early on, and we did. We had Celtic rattled up until that penalty. Okay, after that they ran away with it in the first half. But when you're sat there 3-0 down at half time, having watched your team go after them and play really well, it was just like, I've sat here and watched my team defend really well and they're still 3-0 down. So sometimes you just can't win in that situation. But no, it was a really positive performance. Obviously, we got the 2 goals in the second half as well, which I think we deserved on the kind of the entire game after the chances we had in the first half. And, Celtic probably took their foot off the gas a little bit. They could have ran away with the game with the chances they had in the second half too. But it shows that you can get at them, if there's maybe still those kind of couple of questions defensively at times, depending who the partnership is at the back. If you get decent deliveries into the box, set pieces, the usual kind of small team versus one of the old firm, you can try and exploit that kind of tactic. You just never know. So, no, in terms of the opening day of the season, it was really encouraging to see, which is why I've got so much intrigue into how we set up tomorrow, if we approach it the same way or if we sit back.
Okay, we're going to do something a wee bit different here. We're going to come back to speak about the game in a minute, because Stuart Kettlewell's actually chapping at the door, wanting to come into the show. So before you get too excited, Stephen, we're going to come back to speak about this game in a wee minute or two. But let's hear from the Motherwell boss ahead of tomorrow's game against Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. This is what Stuart Kettlewell's got to say.
We picked up a couple of knocks, just 1 or 2 wee things. I'm kind of hopeful that they'll be okay. Possibly one that might have a wee bit of an issue. So we'll just need to wait and see how that falls. But I think we're in a very similar place going into this game in terms of who we've got to pick from and what's available to us. So nothing much changes in that sense. But obviously from my side of things, what changes is that we have to make sure that we put a team in the park and try and ensure that we don't find ourselves sort of 2, 3, 4 goals behind in a game of football, which we've had in the last couple. And from that group, I still I absolutely believe that solution is there.
Sorry, Stuart Kettlewell was dying to speak about the game tomorrow, Ross, and he was ignorant that he broke into our chat about tomorrow's game against Ross County and Celtic. No, we were having a few technical issues there. It's not like the show to have some technical issues, that is it, Grim? So that was Stuart Kettlewell speaking about the game tomorrow. Don't worry, Stephen will come back to speak about your wonderful team in a minute or two. Ross, yeah, I mean, I think that obviously that you would want to put on our performance as well, because it's in front of the Sky cameras at 12:30 kickoff. And I've never been to Dingwall before, but Celtic always find it very difficult there, apart from that League Cup game last season, because it is a very, very tight park up there.
Yeah, Chris Sutton irked a few county fans with his comments about it being a not the greatest pitch, I think was one of the phrases that was used, which is quite harsh, because I actually think is one of the best surfaces in the league. Like, so when you go around some of the grounds, you can see how they might struggle under the poor weather. But certainly after that first season in the Premiership, it's really improved. And off the top of my head, we actually can't think back to when a game was called off due to unplayable conditions in the pitch, whether it be a waterlogged pitch or a frozen pitch or anything like that. So It's been very durable. So that irked a few county fans at that point. But in terms of it being like a tight pitch as well, yes, it is. It's just like it's an old style ground. There's not much space between, you know, the players and the fans, you know, especially behind the goals at either end as well. So it's always different. It's different tests for different players. You know, some players thrive in atmospheres like that when they can hear every shout. Some don't. Some go into their shell. Now, there'll be a few of the Celtics players' first experiences of Dingwall and the travelling distance and whatnot. Now, it can work in County's favour, obviously, you know, with teams travelling so far up the A9, can they create a bit of a fortress up in Dingwall and have like a bit of a siege mentality? I think, yes, it can work. Obviously, some teams can still come up and just the quality will blow you away. But, you know, it depends if teams fancy coming up to Dingwall and try and put on their kind of style of performance, or if they're off it, you know, and it's a tight park, if the crowd are up for it as well, you know, it's not an easy place to come. You just, you know, if you can create the atmosphere that was created during like the playoff final against Partick, that shows what an atmosphere can do to a team or players in those moments. You know, they look comfortable, and then 5 minutes later they're crumbling because they've just had two things go against them. So yeah, it's always a different test. It's obviously not as big a ground as or stadium as some of the places they'll be visiting, whether it be in the league or the Champions League. You know, it'll be very different going from Dingwall to Madrid on Tuesday night. But yeah, who knows?
Can I just make a point? Like,
Yeah.
Obviously, Brendan Rodgers has referred to it as a camel trek up the A9. Now, Brendan Rodgers has managed in England for the vast majority of his career, where you're needing to travel every couple of weeks. I just think he's clutching at straws a wee bit by referencing the amount of travel they need to do before the European game. I don't know. I just think it's excuses. I mean, I think we've got it really easy here in Scotland. Teams like Ross County need to make that travel every couple of weeks. You don't hear them complaining about it.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I completely disagree with him on referencing that as a factor before the game.
Stephen, how do you think Brendan Rodgers will line up tomorrow? Obviously, Cat Vickers is back in the squad for tomorrow. He was missing out on Wednesday night. I still don't know why. I think he was just rescued for the game on Wednesday night, actually. But how do you think he will approach the game? Obviously, he's got that big game on Tuesday night, but he's got to play a strong team going into the game tomorrow and then on Tuesday as well.
I think it's interesting because you look at some of the Celtic signings like Lagerbielke, you've got Yang, you've got Tilio, you've got Home and Yang came on and did really well on Wednesday night against St Mirren, and I think that's something that Celtic fans have been referencing, the fact that they've spent I think it's between 12 and 15 million on signings, and a lot of them aren't really appearing in the starting 11, so it's pretty interesting. I think you might see Yang or Home come in to the starting 11, given the impressive performance as a substitute on Wednesday night, but I think he will rotate. I don't know, as an outsider, I don't know how we're in 2023 and James Forrest is still getting game time for Celtic, so I think you'll see him dropped.
Graham, show you how bad Celtic were on Wednesday night, or how good St Mirren was when O scored the one goal, came on in the second half and got the man of the match.
I think you've got to give St Mirren credit. I think they defended really well. I think there were a couple of decent chances. Although Azulino said that he was there on Wednesday night and we nearly got them. And I think St Mirren would have been probably worthy of a point, although I do think if Turnbull's penalty goes in the first half, maybe it might be more comfortable, but you've got to give St Mirren credit. And listen, fair play to O. It's probably the one time that St Mirren switched off. You know, they've allowed him space in the box and it was a great finish. But St Mirren did very well. Celtic maybe weren't at their ruthless best, but O is a decent player. Anytime I've seen him, he does look a really good player. And they need more goals from guys like him. They can't always rely on guys like Kyogo to get goals for them. So, yeah, I think it was a massive 3 points for Celtic. But, you know, kind of Ross has spoken about it there. Going to Dingwall is not going to be easy. You know, it's going to be a very difficult game up there. And the fact that County came back from 2-0 down against Hibs, they'll fancy their chances there. Celtic went to East Road last week and couldn't score. If Ross County can frustrate them for a little bit, then they've got a chance. Yes, Celtic got a stronger squad, but it's a difficult game, I think. Honestly, I think Ross County would feel they could get something out of this.
I agree. And I think, Graham, I do think it was a vital win for Celtic on Wednesday night. I think it was huge because you look at it, they've just dropped points against Hibs, and then if they would have dropped points against St Mirren on Wednesday night, that would have been the gap took from 7 points to 3 points in the space of 2 games. And momentum's huge in football. It's massive. And I don't know where people stand on the XG stat, right? But I'm going to whip it out just now, and I promise it's...
No, don't whip out. We're live on radio. Don't whip out.
I promise it's the last time I'll ever mention it, right? But Rangers had an XG of, I think it was 1.8 goals a game under Michael Beale. Since Clement's came in the 3 games, it's went up to 3.43. So that shows you that they're a lot more on the front foot, and there's still a long way to go in the season. I was of the opinion that the title race was done. I don't know if I'm thinking the same at the minute, and I know you can argue the Rangers have had a good amount of penalties, but I want to put a point to you guys. People always say that Celtic and Rangers get more penalties than anybody else. Do you not think that's because they're attacking more often than anybody? So the opportunity to get penalties is there more?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, but I also think that, especially at Ibrox, Rangers are going to get penalties, as it showed last week. Although it was pretty clear, it was pretty obvious that was a penalty. But I think there was a stat earlier on, and I can't remember where I got it from. It was on Twitter earlier on. I think Rangers have had there was a stat about 66 penalties or something like that. So they do get a massive amount. They got another one on Wednesday, but it didn't make a lot of difference, to be honest, because they won the game anyway. But I know there was a comment from Gregor. Dundee, Host and Livingston this Sunday. Hope we do better than we performed against Rangers. I thought Rangers might struggle at Dens Park, especially after the weather conditions. The fact we didn't get there till late, the fact the whole pyro stuff. But they were very comfortable. Although, and I know that a lot of folk have talked about this, but I don't think it made any difference to the actual game. But how that 4th goal is allowed to stand, I do not know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree.
Yep.
Shocking.
Yep. And when you see it in sports scene, no, my camera's goes laughing. But what do you expect? But yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to change the game, Graham, but that's not the point. That the point was, the ref got in the way of the ball. It's okay, and that led to Rangers' goal,
Because I'm sure.
I think
something like the crazy flogging.
I think Graham's doing his Bee Gees impression there.
I was going to say, he cracked out the
I think you've lost it, Graham. Yeah. There you go. Graham, yep. On you go.
No, I was just saying that I thought the rule was that if a referee basically is intruding in the game, then it's pulled back for a free kick, and that didn't get pulled back.
Yeah, or is it not a bounce up as well? No, is that a free kick?
Maybe a bounce ball, possibly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. So yeah. Obviously, Ross, go and listen to Ross's podcast, the County Corner. It's out every week. And I take it you spoke to Malcolm Mackay before the game, or else have you spoke to him in advance of the game, and are they confident going into tomorrow's game?
No, unfortunately, I didn't get along to the press conference yesterday with work commitments and various things because the schedule was slightly different because of the midweek games. But from seeing what you can do on social media and the other media platforms, I think so. Yeah, I never like the expression it's a free hit when you play Celtic and Rangers, because it never is. Because if you go in with that mentality, regardless of what goes on, they can still really damage your season. You've just got to look back last season to Dundee United. Dundee United fans might have thought that was a free hit, and you might lose 1 or 2-0, and you think, okay, that's fine. But if you go and concede 6, 7, 8, 9, as they can put past you on their day, that then carries forward for games after that. It affects the confidence for a long, long time. And, it tests players' character. And, okay, clubs like County are never going into the start of the season expecting to pick up points against a Celtic or a Rangers. Any point that any team picks up against those two is just a bonus. You can't kind of describe it any other way. So it's certainly, I don't like the phrase free hit. We'll be confident. I think the confident as players can put on a performance, and they'll have done their homework where they can exploit Celtic's weaknesses. There'll be a bit more information now of where that may be. Obviously, with 10 games in charge for Brendan Rodgers now? So, including the Champions League games. I know that's a completely different level of match and players, but these teams have shown that they can score goals against Celtic. So, can you transition that into a Premiership team? If they're struggling with deliveries into the box, okay, that's how to create chances against them, or something along those lines. So, look, they'll be organised, they'll be confident. He'll believe in his players that they can do it. Because we've been very close to doing it before and ran Celtic close a couple of times. The 96th minute winner that Tony Ralston scored a couple of seasons back, is probably evident to that. So yeah, look, it'll be interesting. I'm really intrigued by it. I think is my thoughts on it, just because of how we played in the first game of the season. So do we continue with that, especially after how we've done over the last couple of games playing the same way?
Before we move on to talk about the Motherwell Kilmarnock game, or the Kilmarnock Motherwell game tomorrow, I'm going to ask you this question, Ross. I've asked it a few other fans, and obviously I said I've asked Stephen on the show 2 weeks ago when I was back on. A lot of Rangers or Celtic fans say, well, it comes down to the 4 Old Firm games or the Glasgow derbies, but I don't think they're showing respect to the other teams in the league, because look what happened to. Obviously, look what happened to Ibrox for a week against Aberdeen. Look at Rangers last season when they went up to Aberdeen as well. You've ran Celtic and Rangers cross as well. So it doesn't really come down to the 4 from games when you look at it, because you've still got to beat the other teams in the league.
On paper, if you look at the fixtures that Celtic and Rangers play every other season, apart from the Old Firm games, because of the difference in quality of player, the amount of money spent on transfers, every kind of factor you can take in, they should be beating every other team in the league. It's just it's the sad fact of Scottish football nowadays. And every other team thinks, as I said earlier, if you can pick up a draw against them here or there, it's a point gain that you never thought you would have done at the start of the season. So yeah, you could, at the same time, you can only obviously beat with the team that's in front of you as well. Now, there could be a lot of factors going into that game, whether it be like on tomorrow, on Tuesday night, Celtic are going to Madrid, so they'll be probably travelling on Monday night. So will they be having one eye on that? Will they be rotating ahead of that? What will they prioritise? Will they be prioritising a game in Dingwall, or will they be prioritising potential, qualification for either the Europa League or the Champions League? I think you look at it like that, and you think the more focus would be on that, because even if Celtic made 11 changes, that team still on paper is strong enough to beat most teams in the league. It's not like we're, like 10 years ago, if Celtic came with a bit of a mixture of young players and fringe players, you had more of a chance against them. You could kind of rough them up a little bit. Whereas, you just look at the money they've spent on players over the last couple of seasons, likes of that game in the League Cup, Celtic made a handful of changes for that one and still beat us 4-1. It's just, you can't match them on their day. So, and the same with Rangers as well. They could be, they could be on one of those days and they can put 3 or 4 past you and you could still be having a good game. So it's every team in the league obviously deserves the respect, and you can only play against what you come up against. But, on paper, you can understand why people say that, because they are the two most evenly matched sides across it, and just with the difference in everything that the clubs have got, it's tricky to compete with.
Stephen, let's move on now to talk about your game tomorrow. And we heard from your manager about 15 minutes ago, come out against Motherwell. Take it away, Stephen, because I know you've got a lot to say. Remember, we're on until 7.
It's one that I'm really nervous about, to be honest with you, because if we don't win tomorrow, we go into the game against St Johnstone next Tuesday under massive, massive pressure. I can't believe that if we don't win tomorrow, I'll now be sitting here saying that we've got a game against St Johnstone that's a 6-pointer after the way that we started the first 4 games of the season. Crazy. But that's the position we find ourselves in. Kilmarnock have just lost to St Johnstone, so they'll be looking to kick back as well, and will fancy themselves at home against a side that's not winning 6 games. So no, they'll fancy their chances. But I think what we need to do is, I would like to see us change the back line. We've been playing Brodie Spencer at left back when he's naturally left-footed. And Stephen O'Donnell has cost us a few goals at the back post. He always gets found out at the back post. That's one of his weaknesses. I'd drop him, move Brodie Spencer out to the right, and bring in Georgie Gent, who we've got on loan from Blackburn Rovers at left back. So that would be my one big change. And I don't know whether Mika Berev's going to start. He's just coming back for injury. Stuart Kettlewell referenced in his press conference today that he'll need to watch because he's not sure about putting him on a plastic pitch for the start, so he's going to have to liaise with his medical staff as to whether that's possible. So I think, look, I said it earlier in the programme, I think we just need a scrappy 1-0 win, but what we need to do tomorrow is we need to do the basic rights, because if we don't do the basics right, Kelly will absolutely punish us. They've got players that can do that, and the likes of Kyle Vassell and Danny Armstrong. So we need to be on our guard tomorrow, and it's one I'm really, really nervous for. And
Graham, Kilmarnock's just coming off of a beating by St Johnstone, that a surprise beating during the week. Derek McInnes was talking about the game today, and he was saying that we're hoping to win the game tomorrow. It will be a tough game against Motherwell, but we want to get back to winning ways. And I mean, they've got home advantage tomorrow, Graham, as well. But we all know what happened on Wednesday night. They went up to St Johnstone, and everybody thought Kilmarnock would win the game. Who knew St Johnstone win the game? But it's going to be a tough game tomorrow. Now, this is a part of the show where I say the lights out, but nobody's in as well. Stephen, you were saying about Stuart Kettlewell early on, but I think and I don't like to say this to you because I know what you're like, by the way, but if Kilmarnock wins tomorrow, I don't see Stuart Kettlewell under any pressure at all, because, I mean, we've spoke about this in football. I mean, you don't get a lot of time in football now. Football fans are very fickle. Sometimes when you don't win kind of like 3 games back to back, or maybe if you're not winning in the first half, you're sacked by half time.
Now, listen, I do think that we need a result before the international break. So we've got Kilmarnock, St Johnstone, and I believe it's Hearts before the international break. So we need to get a win in one of those 3 fixtures. Hopefully it'll come tomorrow. I just think that Stuart Kettlewell fans are too easy to press the panic button, and it's something that I've been guilty of myself doing in the past is panicking. I just think he's earned the right to get it right, because he came in last February, completely transformed the side, and he's not been in a position where we've been able to start a strong front 2 this season. And if you look at the games against St Mirren and the Old Firm, we created a plethora of chances and just had no one to stick them in the net. And I'm adamant that if Mika Bereth was starting in that game, then we in those games we came out of those games 3 games unbeaten. But hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's something that we're never going to know the answer to, and that's just an opinion I have. But I think if we can get better fit, we'll then kick on, because it's not just what he can do, it's what he does for the players round about him. I mean, Connor Wilkinson scored 2 goals this season, and both of them have been when Mika Bereth's been on the pitch. So Kettlewell deserves time to get his strongest 11 on the pitch, and then we'll start to judge him for there.
Graham, what do you think about this game tomorrow? It's an interesting game.
I think it's a tough one, but I think Stephen's right. It's a massive game for Motherwell. You know, they've not been on the best of forms, but I think it's a tough one to call. You know, I generally looking at the game on Wednesday night with St Johnstone, I think that was probably a coupon buster, because I thought a lot of folk thought St Johnstone would lose that game, and having watched the highlights, that's probably one of the best I think anyone's seen St Johnstone play all season. You know, that first half they were excellent. Come on, it never really offered anything. I just think Motherwell, they need to get, I think they need to win ugly. You know, if they win 1-0, I think they'll probably take it. But they've got to start winning games. I don't think Kettlewell's under any pressure, to be honest, because he is a good manager. He's not under any pressure, but I think this is a massive, massive game. Motherwell win this, and they get a decent run. You know, that game, Stephen's right, they do have Hearts before the international break. And our record at Fir Park is not overly impressive. So, you know, there's a chance that Motherwell could get a decent run of games here. But yeah, they've got to start winning very, very soon. And that game on Wednesday, generally, I don't think anyone expected Aberdeen to go there and be 4-0 up. You know, nobody could have expected that. Yeah, they fought back, Motherwell, but they're just going to start winning games again.
Am I right to jump in? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a weird one, right? So Kilmarnock are a team that, when I saw them play County in September, they had a bit of a rough month, because they were obviously off the back of the big wins against Rangers on the opening day, and then Celtic in the League Cup. Got all the plaudits they deserve, but then they kind of struggled to beat the teams that you'd expect to be around them. Likes of ourselves, they threw the lead away twice against Dundee at Dens, and they've kind of bounced back a bit from that since. They obviously had the win against Livingston, and then the win against Aberdeen. But then they go to McDermott Park and put in a performance like that. They seem to be a very hot and cold team. Like when they click, they are very good. They're resilient. Their back three is on paper very, very strong. You won't create many chances against them. And obviously people have seen that Kennedy, Armstrong, Vassell, they'll cause problems against teams. It's then just, how do they rectify this away form? Because it still seems to be haunting them a little bit, following on from last season. Because, yeah, okay, St Johnstone have had a new manager bounce, but they're still bottom of the league. And off the back of a 2-0 win against Aberdeen, you'd be hoping to carry on that momentum. But then that's then, ground to a halt with a sudden. So that one's really interesting. Whereas, Motherwell have clearly shown that they can score goals. It's just leaking them at the back has been the issue the last couple of games. So, Stephen said there, if Mika Bereth can if he's fit enough to start, you have to start him because of the impact he made. I mean, against us last Saturday, he did turn the game just with his pace and a bit of skill, a bit of guile that they have been missing. Obviously Van Veen's a huge miss for them this season. I think, Stephen will be sick of hearing that between now and the end of the season, with the goals that he scored. But, if you can have a player that can create something out of nothing, which Van Veen could last season, and they clearly have someone there that can potentially do that again, you have to try and utilize him as much as you can. And I understand that, on the plastic pitch, you've always got worries about players and things, but if he's one of your better players and you're in need for points, you need to use him. But the talk about is Kettlewell under pressure, I think that's ridiculous, because I don't know his win percentage off the top of my head, but you look at the form that he's shown since he came in February and the way he's turned everything around. Okay, things aren't going well for him just now, but a couple of wins back to back, and then he's fourth in the table. That's how tight it is. It's not like he's been cut adrift, or there's any panic buttons needing to be pressed. A couple of injuries have really, hampered their progress so far this season as well. So, it's just modern football that, you know, a few losses back to back, and then people are starting to talk about managers under pressure. I think it's just the, you know, owners seeing that there's so much money in football that can be, you know, won or lost. I think is the main thing, especially down in England. Like, a manager can win manager of the month, and then 4 weeks later he's sacked because he's lost a few games back to back, which is crazy. But you know, that's just modern football.
I mean, I think
I was just going to say, while Ross was talking there, he used a word that I think goes to for the whole league, really, apart from the top two, is inconsistency. Now, I think we've had this for so many years in the Scottish League, and it's not just Scottish League, it's everywhere. But apart from the top two, there's nobody really got any consistent runs together. St Mirren have probably been the best of the rest so far, but nobody seems to go on a really big run of games winning, and that's the thing. Nobody in this league is consistent. Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, Motherwell, Ross County, anybody. And that's basically a big thing in this league. There's nobody getting a run together, which is why I kind of asked earlier on if St Mirren can keep this run that they've got going. It's very difficult because, as Stephen mentioned earlier on, if they get injuries, and that's another thing as well. Celtic Rangers have got massive squads. They can afford to have 2 or 3 players out and still be good enough. If other teams get 2 or 3 injuries, you're basically screwed, and that's been a massive problem for years.
I think as well, Ross, going back to your point earlier on, I can't remember what team it was in England. Maybe somebody can watch and let me know, or maybe you guys can help the old man out here. But I'm sure there was a team in England that the manager gets sacked before the season started, and it was actually in the job a few weeks, and it was like pre-season games. It was taken. It was one of the kind of Graham's nodding, so I'm hoping he would help me here, or maybe say, Michael, you're making that up again, move on. But no, I'm sure there was a Premiership manager, like the low half of the league, get the sack before the league even started.
I think the best example of that, maybe, I don't know if it's the one you're alluding to there, but it's Gary O'Neill. He got sacked from Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Probably to quite a few people's surprise, then got the job at Wolves, and Wolves looked like they were maybe going to be a bit hit and miss because it was Lopetegui that was there, wasn't it? That he was there towards the end of last season, but then he left before the season started. Gary O'Neill then went in there, and he's manufactured wins over Man City, and then went back to his old club and won at Bournemouth as well, which is a bit of a, it's proving a point essentially. So yeah, it just shows that football management isn't a job if you're looking for job security. So put it that way.
Okay, keep your comments coming in. We're here till 7 o'clock tonight, and we're on YouTube and Facebook Live. Before we talk about the last game on Sunday, we must talk about 2 of the big games this weekend. Begins tomorrow night, and I think we got into a debate, didn't we, in the WhatsApp group about the ticket sales. I know Graham made a comment this morning about it, we might get into that as well. But we're on until 7 o'clock. Hibs against Aberdeen, kick-off 5:15 tomorrow night. First of all, Graham, what do you make of this game? And before I ask for your prediction, I know who you're going to say. Hibs.
Do you know what? I actually was, because I was on another podcast on Monday, and I did say that although I think Aberdeen, they were very good on Wednesday night, and Hibs obviously struggled against Ross County getting that draw, I just think on that big pitch, the pace of Martin Boyle and LUN could be a really big threat. Now, Aberdeen looked very good in the counter-attack with guys like Majowski and Duke, although Duke's been a bit off form recently. I just have a sneaky feeling, and I hate saying this as a Hearts fan, but I just have a sneaky feeling Hibs might just sneak this. And as I said on one of the podcasts, it might go to extra time of penalties. But I just have a feeling that Hibs on that big pitch with the pace that they've got up top could potentially get through. But it's a massive game for both. It's a massive game for both teams. Nick Montgomery's first game at Hampden, he's going to run out to not massive Hibs support, which is disappointing for him. But it's such a tough game, though. It really is a tough game to call because both teams are kind of very, very similar in styles. But I just have the sneaky feeling that Hibs, just for that pace, might just edge this.
Ross, I know that Chris Boyd had a go at the Aberdeen fans because I don't know if you saw the game against Kilmarnock last week. They make a cheat comment. It's not like Chris Boyd at all. But he mentioned something about, oh, do you think the Aberdeen fans will be happy at coming down the road at that time of night, or but I can't remember the exact comment, but he was making a sarcastic comment against Aberdeen. But I suppose Aberdeen won't care if it's 8 o'clock at night or whatever. Honest, they get into the final.
For me, yeah. Football fans don't care what time the kickoff is really going to be if they're getting to see their team play at Hampden. That's to me, that is the way I would look at it. If Ross County were playing at Hampden at 11:30 at night, I'd still be there. You'd still want to go and witness it. You guys have mentioned the tickets and that there. Fair play to everyone who buys a ticket, travels to support their club, regardless if it's just home games, home and away games, however regularly you go. These moments of likes of Hampden sometimes come around a little bit more often for bigger clubs than they do for some of the smaller clubs. But everyone that buys a ticket, they are big fans. And to the people that don't buy a ticket because for whatever reason that doesn't make them any less of a fan. I know that obviously this was spoken about in the group chat, but there are a lot more important things in football and life just now, especially in like a cost of living crisis, and ticket prices are such a debate, nowadays, and especially for likes of going to a domestic cup semi final or traveling to some of the bigger teams or any of the teams, to be fair, across Scotland. That it's a big cost to spend, and especially like if you're a family taking your kids to the game as well, that's a big day out, and it's a hefty cost, so I know that some people might prefer to see a Hampden packed, and would that maybe be a bigger spectacle at times? Yeah, probably. But just because Hibs are bringing 14,000, I think was the number you guys mentioned in the group chat. Brilliant on that 14,000. And the people who can't make it for whatever reason, that doesn't mean that they don't support the team any less than those people there. There could be any sort of reasons that, as I said, the times or the costs or anything. So, no, it's a label that sometimes is thrown at clubs and fans if there's a poor attendance here, there, and everywhere. And sometimes it's just a bit of momentum on the park. Hibs have gone a few games without a win now. Had they been on a bit of a roll, had they won like 4 games in a row before the Hampden game, would that maybe have piqued a bit more interest from some people who wouldn't have considered buying a ticket? Maybe. But it's a tricky conversation to get into, but certainly it's a label that's thrown at county fans for the trips up and down the A9 if we don't have the biggest support. But it doesn't make anyone that's not there and not a county fan, and it makes me applaud the people who do travel to games regardless of where it is.
I think for me, you're absolutely right with the ticketing scenario there. I mean, I never really get attendance bashing. I mean, it's not the fault of the people that go that the attendance is low, and as you say, there can be a number of factors, meaning that other people can't go. So I've not understood that ever. But if I can bring it back to the game and how I think the game's going to go, you look at it under Nick Montgomery. Hibs have only got 1 league win, and it came against St Johnstone on the 23rd of September. And I looked at it as well that the team that have really, for me, I've mentioned it a couple of times on the show, that they've struggled to really replace Ryan Porteous. I don't think they've done that yet, and they're conceding a lot of goals at the back. So for me, I make Aberdeen favourites for this one. But it's certainly going to be an interesting tie, and one that I'll be looking forward to watching. Hopefully, after Motherwell get 3 points at Rugby Park.
We were talking about Stuart Kettlewell earlier on, Ross, and we were saying, is he going to be under pressure and all that? And I don't think he would be under pressure. But if Aberdeen doesn't win this game, do you think Barry Robson will be under pressure? By the way, before you answer that, I was speaking to Dave about this on the show after the Aberdeen game. And I think Barry Robson's getting a bit of a... you might find that a bit different because he was an ex-Inverness player and all the rest of it. But I think he's getting a raw deal off of the fans because he beat Rangers twice. Not many managers has done that. Went to Ibrox and to Aberdeen and beat them twice. He's got them into Europe as well, and albeit they're up against it, but they're still there. They're still competing as well. But do you think he'll be under more pressure if he gets beat tomorrow in the national semi-final?
The week of the quarterfinal felt like a pretty defining week for him in terms of his job. With he had the back-to-back games against ourselves, the 4-0 one at Pataudry, and then the 2-1 win in the quarterfinal League Cup, and then to back that up by going to Ibrox and winning 3-1. That felt like, okay, this is the Aberdeen side that we saw maybe at the tail end of last season. They'd obviously faltered, and again, no one's running away from this pack. St Mirren are still only 4 points ahead. So, if you can catch them, the quality that Aberdeen have got on the park as well is it's quality. You look at Duke's maybe not had the best start to the season, but you know what he's capable of. Miovski is a top quality striker. Leighton Clarkson's maybe been a bit hot and cold so far this season, but Connor Barron's doing really well in midfield for them. It's a tricky one. Will he be under pressure from some fans if he doesn't win on Saturday? Probably, yeah. But that's just part of being an Aberdeen manager, I guess. It's, there's still the expectation maybe for success, how realistic that is or not, following on from what Sir Alex Ferguson did in the 80s, what is a successful season for Aberdeen? Everyone might give you different answers. Most would probably say third place. And if they can get to a cup final or a cup semi-final, then yeah, I think this is probably the most even semi-final, considering the other ones, Rangers against Hearts, against one of the old firm, you'd expect them to be heavy favourites. But I think this one's really the toss of a coin. Hibs clearly rested some players on Tuesday night ahead of this game. Martin Boyle started on the bench on Tuesday. Nick Montgomery made quite a few changes at 2-0 as well, thinking the game was done at that point. Rocky Pashidi was having a really good game at centre half, not giving Simon Murray or Eamon Brophy anything. And then once he made that change at the back, that's when they kind of started to get put under a bit more pressure. Same when Jimmy Jeggo came off as a midfielder in front of the back four. It coincided with the time that Jan Danda came on the park and kind of gave them a bit more freedom. So I think if he goes with the strongest 11, they'll cause Aberdeen problems, but Aberdeen have got the same capabilities of doing that to Hibs as well because of the amount of goals that they've leaked at the back. So I think it's a toss of a coin, whichever way it could go. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to penalties, is my gut feeling.
Graham, let's speak about the other semi-final, and I don't know if I should say this to you. You might know actually, but in the last 10 games, Hearts has won 0, Rangers has won 8 of the games, but they came close last week at Ibrox. But I mean, I think that the penalty was a decisive moment in the game. One of games, semi-final, first game for Philip Cramon at Hampden Experience. He was speaking today. He said he's not interested about Hampden. He's just interested about his team on the park getting to the final. What do you think about this game?
We've also never beat Rangers at Hampden before, so we've got to end that hoodoo at some point. I'm not as nervous as I thought I would be. I think if we were playing Aberdeen or Hibs, I might be. But we're probably not expected to win this game. What I wanted to see from Hearts recently is a bit of more improvement and a bit more of a style of football. And I think the last couple of games under Naze, we have shown a bit of that. I thought Ibrox last week were a lot better than I thought we would be. We get the goal from Shanklin, and I thought we actually played quite well. Second half, we dropped off a little bit. And then Wednesday night, as I said, we were dominant. But it's a game that I'm more optimistic about than I would have been going into that game last week. But it's a one-off game. I just want us to compete. I want us to go there and actually compete and have a goal. Because the last 2 games we played Rangers at Hampden was a Scottish Cup final under Robbie, and we had no shots on target. And then before that, it was a League Cup semi under Austin McPhee. We got beat 3-0 and didn't compete in that game either. So I just want to see a bit more improvement. And if we can get through, it would be, and I think I said this last week as well, that, Barry Robson has had a couple of statement victories for Aberdeen against Rangers. Mays has not had a statement win yet. This would be that. You should have had that against Hibs a couple of weeks ago and we blew it. This would be a statement win. And you've then got a chance to play, potentially, and I hope this doesn't happen, an Edinburgh Derby final or Aberdeen where you're probably going to be favourites. So we've got a chance, but we need to kind of rectify the performance of last week, because a lot of we were good last week. We need to keep that going. But Rangers coming off the back of a 5-0 win, so they'll be confident. I mean, how bad Dundee must have been when the fact Dexter scored as well. So, yeah, it's a difficult game, but I'm more optimistic than I was after last week going on that game.
I need to phone Ibrox after the show and just tell them it is a 3 o'clock kickoff tomorrow. And if you're not there, you might not be in the final. Stephen, I know that Ross was saying about some Celtic fans that are going to Dingwall for the first time tomorrow. That's the same for some Rangers players there, and that they are going to Hampden tomorrow. Do you think it's going to make a bit of a difference because of the bigger park?
Well, I hope they don't go to Hampden tomorrow because the game's on Sunday. So if they go to Hampden tomorrow, we're going for no reason. But
I'm glad you said that because I was gonna.
It's a long warm up for that.
Listen, in terms of the game, I think Hearts will fancy themselves. Honestly, I think they can take confidence for the way that they played against Rangers at Ibrox. I think the big mistake that they made there, and I'm sure Graham will agree, and I know it's easy to say because he gave away the penalty, but putting Peter Hannon on, I didn't understand that substitution at that point at all when it came back to bite them.
Nobody did it.
I watched the game and I was baffled by it. But no, Rangers, obviously, they've picked up a wee bit under Clement, but they're under a lot of pressure going into this game because it's a lose-lose situation for them. If they win, everybody's going to go, well, they would expect it to. Rangers need to win this competition. If Rangers don't win this competition, I've said it, it's no disrespect to the teams left, but if Rangers don't win this competition, it's a disaster. It's a disaster for them. I think they've won 2 trophies in 12 years, the Scottish Cup and 1 league. So it's a huge, huge game for Rangers, and I just think Hearts will take confidence from the fact that they put up a performance against Rangers at Ibrox and then they followed it up with a win against Livingston. This is going to be tight for me, and I'm really looking forward to sitting down and watching it on Sunday, Michael.
Oh, yeah, Sunday, yeah. I never realised that I said that. I thought I was doing well up until that point, but never mind. Glim, will it be a boost for the Hearts fans and the team that John Suter is out of the game?
To be honest, I'm not that bothered. I'm only focusing on the Hearts. I know they've got a few injuries. Suter is a fantastic player, but I mean his fitness has always been an issue. I think even if he was fit, I'd still think we've got a decent chance. I'm delighted the fact that Shanklin seems to be back in form now. He scored against Rangers, scored against South week before. He was really good on Wednesday. He's back to form. Vargas got his first goal. I was so happy for him because he's been really good. He just needed that goal. So yeah, the focus has got to be on Hearts, but I do think that Rangers do have players that can cause us problems. Todd Cantwell, if he's fit, could be a massive, massive issue if he managed to stay on his feet, of course. But we've got to have a threat going forward. That's the one thing we need. We need to have a threat going forward. And I think the one thing that Nazy's done in the last 2 games is changed the system. He's gone to 3 at the back, and we do look a little bit better in that formation. He's played an extra man in midfield, and it's worked. I think he'll do the same thing on Sunday. But we've got to have a threat going forward. We've not had that the last 2 games at Hampden against them, so we've got to have a threat. But yeah, I think I am more optimistic about this game than I would have been, because when the draw came out ages ago and it was Rangers, I thought, we're going to get hammered here. I don't quite feel that now. I actually think we've got a chance here.
Okay, guys, I'm going to put you in the spot. and I've got to watch what I'm saying here, right? Because Graham's here. But who do you think will be in the pantomime? Oh, sorry, the final in December.
I'll let Ross kick us off.
Yep.
On paper, it should be Rangers that win that game on Sunday. Apologies, Graham. I think it's on paper that's what can happen, but we know that Hampden can sometimes throw up a few surprises. On Saturday, it is. I think it's really, really tough to call the game on Saturday. I think it is literally just a toss of a coin between the two. Because my uncle's an Aberdeen fan, I'll go Aberdeen, because if I predict Hibs, he'll probably won't talk to me if they lose.
Stephen, I'll let Graham sum up a wee while after that comment, Ross. Come back down, Graham. Come back down. Can't see you now. Stephen?
Aberdeen 3-1, Rangers 2-1 after extra time. Sorry, Graham.
Okay. I don't know if you want to hear my prediction first, Graham, or while we go to do.
I'm not coming back on this show. I feel bullied in this show.
Well, yeah, but okay. So it's not because Ross said that, right? I've just got a gut feeling that I'll be a Rangers Aberdeen final. And hello to Ross as well.
I'm going to stick with the prediction I gave on a podcast on Monday. No, sorry, I'm going to stick with the prediction I gave on a podcast on Monday, and I'm going to say, and I really can't believe I'm saying this, I think it's going to be an all Edinburgh final, and I'm going to be absolutely bricking it for the next 5 or 6 weeks.
That would be brilliant, actually, for Scottish football. To see.
God, I hope not. I couldn't handle that again. Did do this to me again.
I wanted just so that I could come on here on the Friday and see what you're like before it. That's all I need.
I'll be on. I'll be on about my bed.
You won't see Graham for about until New Year if that happens, Stephen.
He'll be at Hampden already, waiting for the kickoff on the Saturday at 3:00.
Yeah,
on the Sunday instead.
Because it's fireworks.
Do you know the best of it is, right? I've just come off. I was doing the Macmillan cancer thing, like not drinking in all of October. If it happens to be a Hearts Hibs final, I might be drinking until then.
Look, as we always say on these programs, drink responsibly. So let's go into the small matter of you know how I moved swiftly on from that comment, Graham. What a professional I am. Let's move on to the big game at Dens Park at 2:00 on Sunday, an hour before the second semi-final. Dundee and Livingston. Ross, what do you make of this game?
It'll be interesting to see how Dundee bounce back after Wednesday, because I think that's maybe, they were on a bit of a high after the win against Livingston away from home. But then, as I said, no team's expected to go into the games against the Old Firm and take anything from it. But when you're beating 5-0 at home, that's tough to take. So it'll be interesting to see how they cope. I think I can only comment from what I saw when they play against us. It's the only time I've seen Dundee for a 90-minute spell, and you can tell they try to play really good football. They create chances. They've got a lot of movement up front. I mean, Luke McCowan is a really interesting player as well, which reminds me a lot of a kind of, I would almost want to say kind of like a Danny Armstrong kind of player that can, left-footed, can link the play, create goals. And, I think he's really key to how Dundee play. Yeah, they've obviously got some decent options up front as well. I think Bakayoko looks like a decent player. Looks like he can really run the line, mobile. He'll create teams a lot of problems as well with his physicality. So it's interesting from their point of view. But then for Livingston, obviously there's been a lot of noise this week about Davy Martindale and St Johnstone, and the approach was turned down. They've obviously then gone to Tynecastle, and as Graham said, he was really surprised by their approach there. They'll be looking for this for a bit of retribution after the game at Almonvale. So it's interesting. To me, I think this game screams a draw. if I'm honest. I think both teams would be relatively happy with that. Livingston more so, because it's away from home against a team you just recently lost to. Whereas Dundee will be wanting to kind of make the most of home advantage, but off the back of a 5-0 defeat, you'd like to bounce back in a positive way and just start building again. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, and then certainly from my point of view, watching it on Sunday, it's kind of one of the two teams that are going to be kind of close to County, I would imagine, come the end of the season. So it's likes of those games I'll keep an eye on and see how those two teams are progressing.
And in case you're wondering why that game is on Sunday, Ross's second team's actually playing in Dundee tomorrow. Inverness is across the road at Dundee United. We're all friends here, Ross. All hold hands and all that. Stephen, your thoughts on this game on Sunday?
Absolute snorefest. to put it lightly, one that I'll not be turning my telly on for.
And that's all for the show tonight. Thanks for watching.
Nah, listen, I just, and I mean that tongue in cheek, obviously. I just look at how I think both teams are going to set up. It's a massive game for both teams. Ross is right when he's saying that Dundee will be looking to try and take home advantage and make sure that they get the 3 points there. But I just think that it's got a draw written all over it for me. It's a game that both teams are going to be scared to lose, in my opinion. And I'm going to go one each.
Graham, do you think that when Dundee takes to the park on Sunday, they'll have that not smell of fireworks in Dens Park and the fire alarm going off, but also that Rangers beat them in midweek? Do you think that they will still have that at the back of their minds on Sunday?
Probably. When you get beat 5-0, especially at home, it's a tough one to take, but it was one of the old firm. But I do think they will. I do think they'll bounce back because, like I said, having watched Livingston on Wednesday, they were dreadful. I would like to think they'll be a lot better on Sunday because they can't be any worse. They kind of go to Dens Park and sit and let the thing starts. But I just think Dundee have got something about them. I know that they got hammered on Wednesday, but I do think they've got a couple of decent players in there. And Ross has mentioned McCowan is a really good footballer. I think Dundee might sneak it, but I think Stephen's right as well. I don't think it'll be a great game, but I just think Dundee, after that result on Wednesday, they want to bounce back, and I think they will.
Graham, we know that on the show on Friday night, the weekend starts at 7:45. Maybe for me it's 7:30 because Coronation Street's on. But 7:45 tonight, big game in the Championship, Morton and Glenfermon. Graham, are you looking forward to this game?
Yeah, Morton have not had a great start to sit in the bottom of the league. They've not been overly impressive. I think Dunfermline will be gutted that they lost that in Fife Derby last week. And then, of course, in the Scottish Cup, they get drawn against Leith. So, yeah, it's a tough one, but I do think Dunfermline will win this game. I just think they've got a bit more strength than that Morton side. I honestly think, even already, Morton, for me, look doomed to relegation, which is a shame because I do like them. But, yeah, I think Dunfermline will win this today. But, honestly, I looked at the league table before I came on the night. It's just so tight there. Dundee United look for me like they're going to run away with it just now, sitting on 27 points. They look like the best team in the league quite comfortably, but the rest of that league, there's not much in it. Between 4th, Ayr United, and bottom, there's not much in it. So I've always said that the Championship is the most competitive league in Scotland. And I think you look at the games this weekend as well. Arbroath against Partick, Ayr against Queen's Park, Dundee United against Inverness, and Raith against Deirdre. Some decent fixtures in there. But I do think tonight, I just think Dunfermline will be too strong for Morton.
Stephen, I know it pains you to say it, but Dougie Imley's done a decent job since he's been in there last season.
He's had a tough job on his hands, I think, with everything that's been going on financially at Morton. He did well to keep them in the league last season, but this season they're finding it very, very tough. And I think they'll find it tough again tonight. I think Graham's spot on. I think Dunfermline have a little bit more about them. They've got Kane Ritchie Hostler coming back tonight, who's a who's a massive player for them when he's back in the squad, I think. So they'll be hoping that he can come on and make something happen for them. I think them Fairman will win. I think them Fairman will win 2-0 tonight.
Ross, what about you?
Sorry, Michael.
Yeah.
I think tonight's a big opportunity for Morton because with Inverness going to Tannadice tomorrow, you'd expect that to be a home victory just because of the form that United have shown this season. And okay, Cali have had a bit of a renaissance under Duncan Ferguson, and it's still it's a tough task to go to Tannadice regardless of which Dundee United team you're playing and pick up 3 points, but especially this one that kind of seems to be on cruise control right now at the top of the league. For Morton tonight, it would take them off the bottom of the table, 3 points tonight, or even would a draw take them off? I've actually not seen the championship table, so any sort of kind of positive result to just it's football's all about like psychology and the mind games. That would be huge for Morton if they can jump off the bottom of the table tonight with a win, and then asks the questions of the rest of the league. It then tightens the pack even more, and how do the rest of the teams in the league respond tomorrow? So no, it'll be really interesting. And it was just mentioned there just a minute ago about the Scottish Cup draw for the next round. I actually think it's a really exciting draw across the board. Yeah. There's a couple of really, really interesting ties in there. Like Graham mentioned the Fife Derby in there as well. There's Partick versus Queen's Park as well, which another all championship tie. But the junior teams from Highland League, Lowland League, West Scotland League, any of them that are still involved, you look at it on paper, they've probably got a decent opportunity of progressing through. There can be quite a few upsets in this round, kind of going into the next round. So then when the Premiership teams come in, a lot of these clubs could be looking at potentially big paydays if they get lucky and manage to, get one of Celtic or Rangers away from home or something like that. And that's what these clubs are thriving towards. They want that kind of opportunity. And I think, you look across the ties, and I would say there's only 3 or 4 clear favourites across the full thing that have actually been drawn at home. When you go to any team away from home, if they can make it tough for you on difficult pitches, it's not the same kind of professional pitches that you're used to playing on as a footballer that you might experience in the Championship, or like for Dundee United, for example, in the Premiership last season, although they only go to the Queen of the South. But it's going to ask a lot of tests of teams. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a number of non-SPFL sides make it through to the next round, and that'd be great to see. I think as Scottish football fans who want to enjoy away days to grounds you've never been before and unique games, because especially when we've only got 12 teams in the top flight, away days can become a little bit samey very quickly. So likes of the opportunity to draw someone from likes of the Lowland League that you never normally play would be brilliant too. So
no, I think that this is my favourite time of the year. I think when the fixtures are coming thick and fast, and then you get the Scottish Cup on as well. You get like the festive fixtures coming up around about this time, and then before you know it, the Scottish Cup pitch. It's the best time to be a football fan, and then there's always that hope that you go into with the start of a Scottish Cup campaign before you get beat off a Brother Rangers or something, Graham. You know what I'm talking about. So
for us, it was Hamilton on penalties last season, so I know exactly how you're feeling, Stephen.
Yeah, I know. I'm just referencing the Hearts was out there, but I remember one for us against Albion Rovers. If I can just balance it out, we get beat 1-0 off of them. So no, best time of the year is when the Scottish Cup's coming out, and I think you've got the festive fixtures. 100%.
Ross, I just wanted to ask you about.
Last week.
I just wanted to ask you about Dundee United and Inverness. Obviously, like you're the closest to Inverness than the whole locker room team, but I just wanted to, and I know that you've got some colleagues up at Inverness as well, and I'm sure you're best pals with them, obviously. But I wanted to ask you, what was their reaction when Duncan Ferguson was appointed as manager?
Well, can you already tell I'm kind of putting my allegiances on display with the orange cushions I've got in the background ahead of tomorrow? Halloween cushions that haven't gone away yet. But it was quite surprising, I think, when Duncan was appointed. And I think Cali fans were really surprised as well at it. You look at it on paper, and he was number 2 to Carlo Ancelotti at Everton for a season or two, and it's really highly regarded as a coach. and then he's gone to Forest Green Rovers, and it's just not gone well there whatsoever. So it's interesting. He could have arguably gone to Real Madrid and been Ancelotti's number 2 there. I think that was, I don't know if that was allegedly offered to him, but I'm sure there was stories about that in the media at that point. But then he's decided to go his own way, try and get a route into football management himself. And okay, that first kind of job hasn't gone well. And then it's how do managers bounce back from that when it doesn't go well? Is their stock then dropped dramatically, and who takes a chance on them? And Cali have. And by all accounts, he's a fantastic coach. Players are wanting to play for him, the style that he's implemented. You look at the results they picked up already. That under Billy Dawes, they look like they were really going to struggle. So they've bounced back. And, as much as I joke about Cali and things like that, especially being up in the north of Scotland when the two teams are so close together and there's such a divide between us and the rest of the central belt of like Scottish football and whatnot, it's always good to see when both Highland teams are doing well. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to see Cali thriving and being successful and overtaking us, but just like at arm's distance and saying, all right, you're doing well, son, that's fine. Because then you can enjoy the banter between the two fans and the jokes back and forth. But when they're sat bottom of the championship and they're struggling, looking like they're on their way down, which they did look like, a month ago, you kind of think you don't get as much joy in that. Sometimes you want that rivalry where both teams are doing well. And that was on display during the time that both were in the top flight, especially during that first season that County came up. They were both in the top 6, which was fantastic for like the north of Scotland. I know some people might not agree with me in that sense, but yeah, look, you want that rivalry. You want the competition. So the fact that they've kind of had a bit of a revival is great. Hopefully it just kind of peters out and maybe a mid-table finish in the championship's fine. I don't want them having a successful season or promoted or that, but yeah, just they do all right.
Do you think maybe I'm throwing a bit of disrespect to the Inverness fans, but do you think that it was a bit of a PR stunt to get more people coming in the gates at Inverness?
No,
because it's the man.
I don't think it was, but it certainly captivated a lot of people in the city. The amount of people that, or businesses that have been jumping on the back of Duncan's appointment and sending products in, and he's been taking photos of like Harry Gow's dream rings and stuff like that, which has never happened with any other managers. But it's captivated them because they know what kind of character Dunk is, and his playing career and whatnot. Will it work out in the long term? It'll be interesting to see. I think it depends how they get on until January and how they can then recruit with players coming in and things, because it's always tough to persuade players to come up north and whatnot, especially up the A9. And if Cali are struggling budget wise, if they're floundering towards the bottom of the table, will they be able to convince players to come north? So that'll be all tests that kind of come his way. He's obviously made a few signings so far with like David Wotherspoon and Killian Sheridan and things like that, kind of seasoned professionals that'll probably get them between now and January. Wotherspoon was a cracking player at St Johnstone and could probably still do it at quite a few teams, if not in the Championship, as a squad player in the Premiership too. So he might stay on a bit longer term and be a bit of a spark in their midfield. So, yeah, well, we'll see. But I think it was a smart appointment because it gets the eyes on the club as well.
I think I don't know what Graham thinks, but I think it's a great fit for Duncan Ferguson as well. I mean, to come off the back of, but it didn't go well at Forest Green, to then go to Inverness, where things had went a bit stale under Billy Dodds, I think it's safe to say, running out of steam. So there's not much expectation there from the fan base. It can kind of have one fresh start, freshen things up, couple of results, and I think it's the perfect fit for him to get his managerial career back on track.
And I think it's good for the Scottish game, Ross, to like attract these kind of like so-called big names up here. When he was down south at Everton, because he worked under David Moyes as well, and we all knew what David Moyes done at Everton as well, so it can only benefit the Scottish game for, big names in the game coming back up the road to Scotland.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And especially when he's coming up to the north of Scotland as well, because sometimes as football fans up here, county fans, Cali fans can feel like we're a bit detached from the rest of Scottish football because we are a Highland club. And, as the A9's been referred to already in this show by journalists as a camel trek up there and things, Malky even said it, after the playoff game, that people don't like coming up here. Teams, journalists, anyone at all, because of the distance. So that can then be used against the clubs. But the fact that Cali have still been able to get such a big name such as Dunk into the door, and all the eyes are on them. It's not a PR stunt because you look at the results. If it was a PR stunt, then he's now backing it up on the pitch. But it's also got fresh eyes and a bit of a fresh lift to people around the club because, things had gone stale under Billy Dodds. I mean, things were already stale when they got to the Scottish Cup final. That run there earned him his new contract. Had he not got to the Scottish Cup, they could have been looking for a new manager in the summer. So they kind of gambled on would it work, and they've started the season and it didn't work at all. So they made a decision to make the change. And they've had the new manager bounce. Full credit to him. He's been given the opportunity to make signings and take them in, get them up to the speed. So we'll see how that kind of carries on.
Graham, another interesting game tomorrow is Ayr United against Queen's Park.
Yeah, it's, and just to answer Gregor's thing here, didn't know you were a father, Graham. Yes, I have two. I have a laddie who's 11 and a stepdaughter who's 18. And yeah, I know I don't look old enough, but I've had a hard paper around clearly. But yeah, it's an interesting game. I think Ayr, again, I've been I use that word inconsistent again, but it's a difficult game. But I kind of, I've not been to Summerside Park for a long, long time, but it's one of these grounds I quite like going to, or I certainly did back in our younger days. But, again, I'm just looking at the league table, sitting fourth. Queen's Park sitting seventh, and I did wonder, and I think I said at the start of the season, I did wonder if Queen's Park could kind of continue what they did last season, but they've kind of not been able to maintain that so far. They can still okay, but yeah, I just have a feeling that again, because it's at Ayr United's ground, I think Ayr United may win that, but it'll be very, very difficult. I'm going to go 2-1 Ayr.
And it's funny, Stephen, because as well, Graham was saying that there a bit last season, everybody was wanting a Bluff to come up. Now the wheels just came off the bus. And basically, you would say that's similar to Queen's Park this season.
Yeah, no, Queen's Park, I think the problem this season has been too many draws. They're drawing games this season that last season they would have been getting 3 points in, and over the course of a season that makes a big difference. So it's a big game for them tomorrow against United, but again, it could be another draw. All these games in the Championship are tight. I think out with Dundee United and maybe potentially Raith, it's a toss-up between who's going to win the majority of the games against each other. It really is that close. I'll be Switzerland again and sit in the fence and go for another one each.
And 2 games left, Ross tomorrow. Raith Rovers against Ayr United. That's an interesting game as well. And a Bluff against your favourite team, Packet Thistle.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, had Dundee United not been in the league this season, everyone would be talking about Raith Rovers, and deservedly so. I think Raith Rovers have kind of gone a little bit under the radar, perhaps, compared to Dundee United because United have been so good. However, Raith Rovers have been, pretty good as well. A lot of changes went on there during the summer. A couple of ex-county players joined them, like Keith Watson and Josh Mullen. You look across their team and they do have a lot of quality. They really recruited well, which is being shown now with the results, and they're winning big games as well. Like Graham mentioned earlier on about the Fife Derby, they've won both those games now. So it's important to create that momentum, and the fans are behind them as well. They're clearly buying into what is going on at Raith Rovers, which is brilliant to see. So I think, in terms of a prediction for that, I can only really see a home win. But, Stephen said that the league is so tight. Like, so Ayr have got fantastic players themselves as well, like so Jamie Murphy and Aidan McGeady as two players there that, you know, on their day they can cause teams in that league all sorts of problems. And yeah, obviously Wraith are going to have to be aware of that defensively, but yeah, I can only really see a home win in that. And as for the Arbroath Partick Thistle game, yeah, Partick is a how many second teams have I got according to the show today? By the way, I've had Inverness, I've had Partick. I mean, what am I here? I mean, Stephen's saying he's Switzerland. I must be Switzerland with all these second teams supporting as well. It's a strange one because Partick seem to have had really good moments this season, but then dropped as well. You know, like so the games at home to like Dundee United, and obviously full of praise for Dundee United, but you don't expect that a 5-0 defeat at home, especially when a former player comes back and scores a hat-trick. They had a lot of momentum last season, and in the playoff games, it was always interesting to see how would they cope when a team tested them. They're clearly having teams test them this season, and they're at times coping, at times struggling to cope. It's never an easy game when you go to Arbroath, you know, and okay, they had a really good run of form. They beat Partick at Firhill early this season as well. So Partick will be going in there with, you know, a bit of revenge on the minds perhaps, but Arbroath will be knowing, well, they've already beaten them once, why can't they do it again? You know, it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. I think you look at it on paper when a full-time team plays against a part-time team, you've always got to look at the full-time team as the favourites. But, you know, Arbroath have proved time again that they're no easy match for anyone. So, yeah, I think that my gut feeling is that it's probably going to be a draw.
I just wanted to finish up, Graham, talking about the women's team. They were playing Holland. I think they played Holland last leg of night as well, but they played them on Tuesday at Hampden. And it's not a brilliant start to the Nations League because 2 games and no wins. But I was going to say, do you feel as though it's a good thing for the women's game to introduce the national, the Nations League?
Yeah, and I've heard this about the men's game as well. I think it takes away the friendly games, having competitive games. I think it's much better. And I think in terms of the group, it was such a hard group. You're playing Holland, Belgium and England. It's not an easy group. And to be fair, if you go back to the games that we have played, England, we were unlucky to lose that game. We should have got a penalty. It wasn't given. Belgium, we got a draw. Should have won that game. Holland last week were just a little bit too good. But to be fair to the women, they were excellent the other night at Hampden. They were really good. So it has been a bit of a step up, but it's a learning process for Pedro Losa and the team as well. I think there has been a lot of improvement, but you're up against quality. You know, Scotland are the lowest ranked in this group, so you're up against real quality. And I think there have been signs of a decent performances, but the game against Holland last week, they were just done by a better team.
It's good experience you would have to see, Ross, about for the women's team to come up against these nations and in the tournaments as well, and good experience about playing at Hampden as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's always tough, regardless of what level of football you're playing, is when you're coming up against these elite teams. You know, it's a test, and it's how you cope in these tests. And I don't think it was any surprise that, you know, Scotland coped better in that match on the other night against the Netherlands with the return of Erin Cuthbert, because just the quality that she'll bring into that team, obviously doing really well down at Chelsea, who are a brilliant team down in the Women's Premier League. So it's no surprise that she can bring that composure on the ball, you know, bring a bit of a calmness. And, you know, you look at the comparison between the two results, and they've pushed the Netherlands really close. It wasn't to be, but it's almost similar to the men's team where Steve Clarke said he wanted this test up against the elite teams, you know, so how they use the ball in these moments. But it's fantastic to see that, you know, we can go up and compete against these teams, because for so many years as Scotland fans, we weren't able to see this. So it's fantastic to see just every Scottish national team kind of thriving just now.
Okay, so that's all for tonight, folks. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, thanks for all your comments. Thanks to Ross, Graham and Stephen. We'll be back on Sunday after the 2 semi-finals at 7 o'clock at night, and Graham will have his fireworks. So watch out for that one. So have a good weekend. See you soon.
locker room with all the sports news you need. Live